Democracy is under vigorous, vicious, and sinister attack.
What we emphasize to the president is that our backs are against the wall. This is the moment. There is no more time.
This will be a summer of activism, a summer of getting back in the streets, a summer of saying to the Senate and the Congress, you may be going home, but it's going to be warmer politically than you think.
Civil rights leaders calling on this administration to help them take action against voter restriction laws that are sweeping this country. The top leaders there gathering with President Biden and Vice President Harris yesterday for nearly 2 hours in what our friend, the Reverend Al Sharpton, described as a, quote, very candid, no-holds-barred meeting, expressing their serious concern over the dangerous anti-voting efforts and arguing for the joint cooperation of the White House, the Congress, and local leaders, urging the administration to take more assertive action and speak louder against the attacks on our democracy. Also, making it clear that this will be the summer of activism and pledging to take to the streets to do the same. Joining us now, the Reverend Al Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation, president of the National Action Network. Sam Stein is still with us. Rev, how blunt did it get in there? Did you lay it all out?
Very blunt. I think that we made it very clear to the president the outrage that people feel all over this country, that we're sitting at a time where the Supreme Court last week in effect said that you can change the voting restrictions, the voting operations in a state, as long as you don't just outright tell people they can't vote. If you make it more difficult, if you cut down on voting sites, if you do anything that make it inconvenient, well, that really doesn't affect their right to vote, which in effect is saying to states, do what you want to do. If you want to make it difficult based on race, based on the geography of a state, and we're not going to rule against you. This is dangerous. This is why we wanted to meet with the president. He invited us in, and to say that we want to see you and the vice president use your bully pulpit and your negotiating skills in the Senate and the Congress. But we're going to mobilize a movement all over this country, just like they have a movement around the big lie and have put so much pressure on Republicans in the Senate that they are afraid to move. We're going to build a movement to let people understand it's going to cost you politically if you do not bring laws to protect our right to vote.
I want to ask you to describe this president's state of mind about these laws on a personal level. I was thinking back to how he became the Democratic nominee, and in no uncertain terms, the only reason he prevailed is because African-American men and women, young and old, in South Carolina picked him. They picked him over people who had been winning the earlier primaries and caucuses, and he marched to the nomination after that. Is he motivated, by doing the right thing? And is he also motivated by understanding that the voters who made him the nominee and then went on and supported his general election campaign are the very voters Republicans are seeking to disenfranchise?
Candidly, I think he's motivated by both. He said in the meeting things that would lead you to believe both. One, he said that at some point, one of us was speaking about the strength of the black vote and what black women did. And he said, yes, and I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if it wasn't for black women's votes and the overall black community. He voluntarily said that. He also said in a give and take that he and I had about the years that we knew each other in the Obama years, and I had referred to, I had just done an interview about those years, and he said, yes, and I do not want history to say under Joe Biden that the vote was weakened among people of color. So I think he has a sense of what is right, and I think he also has a sense that he is in office because people came out in the communities that are now under threat and voted for him, even though he came in way behind in some states leading up to South Carolina. And I think that is why he is not falling on deaf ears. I think that he's trying to wrestle with strategically he's going to do that would help. I don't think it's a question of moving forward. But I think he also understands we cannot wait on him to figure that out. We've got to mobilize. We have to go in these states and give people a choice that are in the Senate. Are you more afraid of right-wingers that want to believe the big lie and limit our right to vote? Or are you more afraid of us that's going to vote you out if we've got to stand online 10 hours and go to drop boxes that are not there and go to the next place? Either way, you're going to have to make a choice. Right now, the other side is on the ground and mobilizing. Now the LaTosha Browns and others are energizing, and we are going to be doing that nationally. We have this big march, Martin Luther King III, and I have called along with March On in Washington in August, because we want them to understand this is not going to be a one-sided fight. You think that the people on the ground that you're afraid of is the only ones out there. We're going to show you mobilization, and you're going to understand that you can lose, because we are the margin of difference in many of these states where they're acting now like only Donald Trump and his movement exists. There will be and must be another movement.
Sam Stein, the problem, I guess, for this president is that you can already accurately say that under Joe Biden, the vote was restricted. There are 22 voter restriction laws that have been signed into law. That has already happened. So under Joe Biden, voting is harder than it was under Donald Trump because those laws are new. They were passed after Donald Trump lost. And my question for you is, do you see something I don't see? In your coverage, are there frantic working groups? Are they trying? I mean, the only way to actually undo all of them is federal voting rights legislation. That's it. The lawsuits will take years. So Merrick Garland has filed one in Georgia. We learned yesterday that the judge says it's waiting for the underlying case to be resolved, which is expected to take years. There isn't a legal strategy that aids Republicans from 22 enacted laws and 389 proposed laws in 48 states before the midterms. So unless they're just ready to move Mitch and Kevin in, they need to do something more quickly than sue. I mean, do you detect any signs of life for a legislative solution?
No. And I don't want to make the Reverend's optimism sound misplaced, because he has way more history and the pressure points that come with mobilization movements than I do. And it's perfectly possible that the sort of on-the-ground grassroots efforts that he's envisioning can have an impact on how lawmakers view this. But the question fundamentally is, are there 10 Republican senators in which the African-American vote is substantial enough in their state to potentially cause them to second-guess their position? And for the life of me, I can't figure out the 10. I mean, maybe there's a handful here and there, but I don't see the 10. And that's the fundamental problem that faces Joe Biden and Democrats writ large right now, which is they have a institutional hurdle in the Senate in the form of the filibuster that prevents them from moving federal legislation without 60 votes. And they do not have the necessary 50 votes to change that rule. And until they get those 50 votes to change that rule, any legislative remedy that you're talking about will be stymied. And that's the crux of it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You can have DOJ lawsuits, you can have threats of lawsuits, you can mobilize locally, but in the end, it comes down to, can you get federal legislation enacted? And right now, the avenue for doing that is fully closed.
Rev, this is the sort of the blunt, ugly, very undesirable truth of the situation. And what's so tragic is that the last time a president's party defied midterm history was my old boss in 2002 after 9/11. DOJ just described Donald Trump and Fox News as clear and present ongoing threats to the democracy. And that's why they're arguing that they can't let insurrectionists to roam their communities. They don't just threaten their communities in this Justice Department's views. They threaten, quote, our democracy. You have another security election if you want it. Do you think Democrats understand that historic opportunity they have if they act quickly enough to just protect not just the right to vote, but the right to have fair and honest arbiters of the vote? Republicans like Brad Raffensperger and Gabe Sterling and people who walked the line for our democracy last November.
I think that Democrats understand what we make them understand. You must remember that if you go back to when I was a kid, or even before my time, when they did the civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s, they made the Democratic Party understand that Kennedy and Johnson were not leading the movement. They responded to a movement. And I think to Sam's point, I agree that you can't count 10 states right now, but I can think of some states that the margin of victory can be tipped by those black voters and those voters of conscience in those states. So if Democrats put up a real good contender that gets an unusual turnout in those states where we may not be the majority, but we could be the difference, you can have a real threat. The other part of that is if you have the right kind of mobilization, Nicole and Sam, you would then make the Democrats and the Republicans have to deal with the question of the 60 votes and the filibuster. Can you make the workaround work, or can you deal with the filibuster? But either way, we're going to make this deal. What is non-negotiable is that we're not going to let them continue this growing pattern that has already happened, as you cite, in several states, to erode our democratic ability to exercise our vote. That's non-negotiable. So whether we get to a point where it's the filibuster has to go, or we have to figure out the states that the votes are going to matter, what is not on the table is that we're going to allow this to continue to go through all 50 states. That's not going to happen. And the way that we were able to get the voting rights bill in the first place is it came from the ground up. It didn't come from the beltway down. And that's what we're going to have to do this time.